Our topic today is trends influencing the future workplace. And our guest speaker today is Stephen Shoemaker from Hayworth. And he's agreed to share his thoughts and some of the trends that Hayworth is seeing from visiting with their peers out there. So we appreciate him spending his time with us the next hour, sharing the ideas. A couple of housekeeping things before we get going. If you wouldn't mind shutting your video off and muting your mic so that we get a clear recording as we start working through this, I would appreciate it. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll open up the conversation for any questions and look forward to a great afternoon. All right, Steve, I'll open it up to you.
All right, thank you very much. Can you hear me okay? I just was maneuvering my technology to make sure that I had the right screen and the right volume. Am I good?
It looks good to me.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you very much. Well, thank you everybody for taking some time out of your day today. We are going to do a quick run through of trends influencing the future workplace. The course information, some of the housekeeping stuff that we need to make sure of is all included up front here. Obviously, this is a CEU that's rated by both IDCEC as well as AIA. And you're going to see this slide a couple of times. This is a way to not only register your attendance, but to make sure that you're credited for the CEU. And I will post this at the very end of the presentation, as well as Kevin and I both have this as a separate slide. So that, if you need it, I can send it to you and you can log on and get your credit along those lines. So hopefully making that easier for folks.
Yep, and if you have any issues at the end and you don't get what you need, please send me an email and I'll get you that information that Steve's referring to, and we'll make sure that you get your credit.
Perfect, thank you. So this CEU is really an overview of the STEEP strategy model. If you're not familiar with that, you're about to be. It really focuses on 5 major categories: social, technology, environmental, economic, and political. It just seeks to categorize trends that influence better decisions for working at home. As specifiers, designers, furniture providers, we need to be up to the current trends in all areas so that we can influence the future workplace environments and make evolutionary shifts in culture, design, work styles, space, and furniture. And I would say that at this point in our careers, there has never been more flux in culture, design, work styles, space, and furniture. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but it's very appropriate to kind of put these types of decisions into a framework. So our overview is our comprehension and understanding of the STEEP strategy model. Then we're going to spend a few minutes talking about the topics that are shaping and driving change and how they can influence the future of work. Then we're going to actually do a little deeper dive in each of those trends by category. And finally, we'll connect these trends with the creation of environments that will evolve, change, and impact the future of the workplace. So very timely in light of all the pandemic conversation. So our learning objective number 1 is to understand the STEEP strategy model. And basically it breaks down into 5 categories. You've got social, which includes all items like values, attitudes, those types of things, technology. We're going to do a deeper dive. So we'll do technology, economic, environmental, and political. We'll kind of dive into that one as well. It's always entertaining. But by category, basically what we're talking about with social factors include values and lifestyles, attitudes, consumer trends and demographic influences, education and changes in education, population development, and then aspects of society that really impact us all personally: family, friends, colleagues, neighbors, and the media. So kind of all encompassing there. Technology, obviously we're seeing a lot of that right now with new technologies, technology's effects as it ripples through. Zoom meetings and, and team meetings are certainly a profound evidence of that. Research and development, new products and processes, product life cycles, as well as technology investments. And again, there's ready evidence of all of these right now. Economic factors include economic growth, inflation, interest rates, exchange rates, unemployment, income, business cycles, world trade and resource availability. Again, another timely one in light of today's rolling economic environment. I will put a little bit of perspective on that. Environmental would include all material and resources, disposal, emission regulations and energy, transportation routes, life cycles, obviously the effects of global warming. All are super impactful. And then probably the most volatile one is political factors. We've got policy frameworks, labor market policies, government policies, political stability, tax policies, security requirements. All of these come together to form kind of a stew and really influence everything that's going on in the office today. So our quick overview of learning objective number 2 is just to learn the topics. And this is kind of a high level overview. So for social, the big factors right now are generations at work. And we're going to do a dive on each one of these. The rise of women, stress at work, attracting top talent. When we look at technology, the need for speed, multi-experiences, human-machine collaboration like AI, and then the smart ecosystem. Economic would include the global outbreak, untapped labor, digital money, employee engagement. Environmental would be the need for nature, the price is light, timber is trending, and our circular economy. And last, political and to be determined. So hopefully some humor there. So as we go into learning objective number 3, where we'll spend most of our time, we're going to take a look at some of these social trends and what's going on in the market. One of the biggest things right now is the decline of the baby boomer. You know, being born from 1946 to 1964, we're starting to get to the end of the baby boomers as far as the working generation. They are actually not the largest anymore. That is a very recent addition. 27% of the workforce is baby boomers. And one of the things that we'll talk about as we go across these trends is what are the commonalities, what kind of attributes can you put towards each of these groups? And with baby boomers, they're loyal, dedicated, and who get a lot of personal fulfillment from work. The next one is Generation X from 65 to 1980. They prefer independence and fewer rules at work and seek to balance work and family. And right now they are the largest group in the workforce, and followed by Generation Y, which are almost the same at 35%. So these folks prefer direct communication and feedback at work. They want a social friendly work environment. They are also, by and large, the parents of the current generation of youngsters that are fighting some of the biggest battles. And I don't want to take away anything from anybody else, but by and large, this group is dealing with the kids who are trying to get to school through the pandemic. Then a couple of smaller ones as we get to Generation Z. These folks are just starting to come into the workplace. They communicate best by smartphone and email, no surprise there. And they have large networks. They know a lot of people, but they don't really have much in the way of job experience. And then last but not least, and this was a new one for me, is Generation Alpha, which actually just started a couple of years ago. And they're going to expect workplaces to be technologically advanced. They're going to embrace more diverse workplaces than we've seen in the past. And just so that you know, this is one little tidbit, moving forward, the generations are going to be named after the Greek alphabet. So starting with Alpha is the first one. So you'll see that progression. And that will make some sense for folks in future generations as to when were those baby boomers again? So in any case, that's obviously a big social trend is these generations moving through the workforce. But as I said, they have some common values that are super important to all the generations, and they're fairly straightforward. I think most of our leaders are seeing this, that they want to feel respected, they want to be listened to, they want to have opportunities for mentoring and understand the big picture. They want to receive effective communication, and they want to receive both positive and growth feedback. so that they're experiencing exchange of ideas. What does all that mean? It's a lot of communication, that if you're not communicating with your employees on a consistent basis, that you're missing a great opportunity to advance your corporate culture, even in an era of working remote. That's probably one of the biggest challenges for like new hires when they come on board. What can we do to bring them into the fold of any particular company? And these values really do a nice job of grasping that piece of it. Probably the biggest social trend that we're going to see around the world, including the United States, is the rise of women in the workforce. There are a couple interesting statistics, and this is from 2020, just so you know the numbers are pretty fresh. Women now outnumber men in the workforce by 109,000. The Fortune 500 list, there are now 33 women who are CEOs. And women-owned businesses are driving economic growth. They represent 42% of all businesses, nearly 13 million, almost 10 million workers, and generating revenue of 1.9 trillion. So that's a huge number, particularly when you look at the number of women that aren't working in other countries. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Social trend number 3, I think everybody's personal favorite, is stress at work right now is just crazy. When you look at the stress that private and that your private life and your work life have at the moment, it's just astronomical compared to times in the past. So we're seeing rises in ill health in individuals, absenteeism, healthcare costs, obviously turnover for organizations. 56% of employees say stress and anxiety impact their job performance. And here was one that was kind of eye-opening for me, is that 62% of missed work days can be attributed to a mental condition. And so I think we're going to see a lot more focus on well-being at work. How do we make employees comfortable and give them that space that they need to be able to shed some of that stress? Social trend number 4, attracting top talent. Always a challenge for companies, even more so now because virtually everything is happening virtually. Sorry about that. It's so hard to get face-to-face interviews, but there are still people moving around with jobs. They're finding ways to improve their health and well-being. And that is happening at work through daylight, access to daylight and views, healthy food, height adjustable tables. I only giggle at that because I've seen several references to that. A height adjustable table can fix quite a few of corporate problems these days. I'm not sure that's exactly true, but for a while that was a mantra that I think the industry was repeating. Offering variety and choice in the workplace, that flexibility is just key. Experiences, fun, excitement, anything to make life easy, as well as a modern aesthetics and design. So what does that mean? It means if you're working from home, you're gonna have to have a pretty good reason to go to the office. If you're allowed to work from home or encouraged to work from home, your case to go to the office is gonna have to be very compelling. Or you're going to stay at home. And so I think there's some challenges for us as space designers and furniture people moving forward, is how do we make that space attractive for attracting that talent? So the next one we'll talk about will be a little bit for technology. And again, very logical in what you're going to see into these. The need for speed, obviously 5G is driving so much of our technology consumption at the moment, because we're about to upgrade everything from phones to TVs. You know, the patchwork of connected to devices is going to increase and continue to increase on all these remote devices. I mean, everybody's familiar with the watches and the sensors and those types of things, but even in our business, we've had some excellent engagements where we used like seat sensors. I think is a perfect example of what 5G is going to bring to not only our business, but all businesses, as things are going to happen faster. It's going to be based on more data. And that turnaround time is just going to be critical, because you're going to have to be speed to market. is going to be so important. So we're going to see more 5G rollout over the next year or so, and that's going to really start to impact organizations who are working globally because it's going to be so much faster. Multi-experiences is a dovetail right off the first one, because what we're really going to see is more apps and multi-experience development. So what does that mean? It's going to be the ability to use more like the smart boards in the photo here. There's going to be more connectivity. One of the things that we're going to see of, and I'm going to shoot right into number 3, is the human-machine collaboration. You're just going to see a lot more data-dependent decisions. And you can call that AI or intuition, whatever you'd like to do, but we're going to see a lot more of that, and it's going to drive new products, new services, and new markets very quickly. These revenues could boost business by 38% over 5 years. I mean, that's just substantial. And you're going to see some very impactful numbers here as we talk about, you know, the ability of AI to improve business, the impact of women in the workforce, and those types of things. There is still a lot of room to grow. And by 2025, the workforce, will be a complex balance between manpower and machine power, allowing employees to take on higher value work, which hopefully will give them a chance to do more strategic and satisfying work. The smart ecosystem, and this is a personal favorite of mine, is because it really does a nice job of the smart buildings have the potential to use space more efficiently, increase productivity, enhance employee experience, reduce energy costs, and support more flexible work environment. This is a great space that we're looking at here. This is actually in Kansas City at Dairy Farmers of America, and it was chosen by somebody else who had no knowledge of the project as being a great space. I like it because it's got great access to outside, but allows you to shut those doors and have a fully functional indoor space. And so it's made with employee engagement and experience in mind. And it's a very compelling space. It's a great building. If you get a chance to get down there and want to see it, I would highly recommend it. So moving on, we talk about one integrated network that will control all building systems and services, lighting, software ecosystems, where everything is just going to work more closely together. That integrated approach is going to allow us to get past a lot of costs and security issues and those types of things as those building systems become smarter and smarter. The next one is economic. I apologize for giggling because the global outbreak seems to be a well-worn topic, but obviously this is permanently going to change how we work in the future. With so many unknowns surrounding the trajectory of the pandemic, the response from governments and businesses, we're not sure what the precise impact on the global economy is going to be. We've seen some up and we've seen some down, but they're by a very conservative estimate. Bloomberg figures it was 2.7 trillion when they put this thing together. And my guess is those costs are only stretching up as we go. So that's obviously a very significant cost that we're going to have to absorb over time. Here's one I've alluded to a couple times, and that's the pool of untapped labor. And this is globally. Women represent one of the largest pools of untapped labor. 655 million fewer women are economically active than men. So there's a huge opportunity there. One scenario suggests that if every country matched the rate of improvement in gender gaps of the best performing country in their region, 12 trillion more of annual GDP could be realized in the next 4 years, which is the equivalent of Japan, Germany, and UK combined. So that is a huge number. So when we're looking for opportunities to increase business and increase the well-being of people living around the world, this is a huge one right here. Digital money. I don't know if you've all been following Bitcoin over the last couple weeks. It's just been amazing. Social currencies having big impacts on social platforms. Facebook unveiled their digital currency. China is developing its own digital currency. Big question is, will customers trust the institutions where massive data breaches and foreign country hacking has occurred to store their Bitcoins? So that's just getting rolling. And I don't know if anybody's been following it, but Bitcoin, there was an article that was published a couple days ago. There was somebody who bought a pizza with Bitcoin about 10 years ago when it was first launching. And based on the rate at that time, that pizza cost him about $470 million in today's Bitcoin valuation. So you're just going to see those, the massive amounts of wealth flow back and forth using tools like Bitcoin. And probably one of the bigger ones for us is employee engagement. When you look at that first one, that's kind of a shocker. Only 34% of all US workers are fully engaged. For millennial workers, that drops to 29%. And what does that mean? If you got 10 people in the boat, you got 3 driving, 4 riding, and 3 chopping holes in the back of the boat. So we're trying to identify what it takes to help people be more engaged at work. And right now we've got a long way to go. They produce better, they have better collaboration, they have better results, they come out with new innovative products and services faster. That is a huge competitive advantage, and you just can't avoid it. So as you look at the bottom one, actively disengaged employees cause US companies between 450 and 550 billion in lost productivity each year. So again, those are significant numbers. Now we go to environmental and the need for nature. I've talked about this for quite a while. I'm a huge proponent of getting outside and the value of that. People have an innate desire for the connection with nature, known as biophilia. Research shows that being outside can be energizing, enhance mood, improve overall well-being. And that can happen, that benefit, sidebar here, that benefit can happen in as little as 15 minutes of being outside a day. So even when it's cold, I'm not saying go outside for 2 hours in minus 20-degree weather, that would be kind of crazy. But even being outside for a few minutes can be very invigorating this time of year because of the cold, the clouds, the shut-in feeling. I highly recommend that. And it's a huge need for companies. A recent study from Stanford found that walking in nature can boost creative problem-solving skills by 60%. I have been fortunate enough to be around several workplace strategists, and without question, they all reference that if you're having trouble solving a problem, get up and go outside for even a few minutes, and you will probably find a new approach. It may not solve the problem, but you'll almost certainly find a new way to think about your problem. So that's extremely important. And so you're going to see a lot more plants in workplace to help clean the air and boost productivity, more focus on outside furniture, because even as cold as it is today, as soon as we get about a 40-degree day with sunshine, everybody's going to think it's nice enough to be outside, including me. So just food for thought. The next one is light. The price is light. And that really comes in a couple of different aspects. Number one is to help buildings be more energy efficient. Many organizations are making significant lighting upgrades to their commercial buildings using LED. Traditional light sources like CFL and incandescent are certainly going by the wayside. LEDs are lasting up to 10, 20 times longer. And with the computer controlled lighting, you can actually do a lot of daylight harvesting into those spaces. So it's a great story there. The future of smart lights is coming to help boost your Wi-Fi, and we'll be able to transmit data over light. Now that's a new one for me, and I'm quite anxious to see how that evolves over time. The next one is timber. It's easy to cut, it's versatile, it's lightweight, locally abundant, conveniently transportable, naturally renewable. It can serve triple duty, delivering structural, aesthetic, and health benefits. And I'm hoping that most of the team being in Des Moines have had a chance to get over and see the new wood building over, I've got to remember what address it's on, just outside of downtown towards the Capitol. Beautiful building. I had a chance to get through it, and very impressed with the wood structure of that one. And everything that it's doing as far as reducing cement, steel, all those greenhouse gases and the heating, all those types of things are cut with that type of a building. And then finally, sustainability. Um, Shoppers are still buying brands where they reflect values, particularly in terms of sustainability. They still want friendly goods, highly durable products that are made to last, reducing their impact on the environment. So hopefully Amazon can come up with a better shipping box that we can continue to reuse. And last but not least is political. And I think everybody kind of understands the political ramifications on these types of models, how divisive that can be. There's not good communication. There's just some great challenges. The message that we get, the message that we really try to deliver here is that organizations that provide forums for open and frank conversations on difficult topics do better than companies that don't do that. So if you've got diversity challenges or economic challenges in the workplace, there's a model out there that allows employees to come together and talk about them without fear of retribution and to educate other employees. And those types of programs see some very significant improvement in how people get along and understanding what motivates your coworkers. So learning objective number 4 is connect these trends, how these trends will influence the creation of environments that will evolve, change, and impact the future of the workplace. So we're going to start off with a focus on well-being. We'll talk a little bit more about technology in the year of remote work, distractions and focus, and returning to the workplace. So I think everybody is familiar with well and what the concept of well-being. We've got some great new apps that are available out there to help people with everything from calming themselves down to helping themselves fall asleep, motivational, all those types of apps to help us keep moving. Some of them specifically to get out of our chairs. So there's all types of workplace nudges that you're going to see. Daylight, obviously, we just talked about it, provides physical and emotional benefits. But the wellness amenities, healthy food, fitness facilities, classes, walking trails, those types of things are all extremely important for people to have places to de-stress. Respite rooms, quiet libraries, outside spaces would also fill into that in my mind. The virtual collaborative technology piece has obviously changed the world. A year and a half ago, I think most people were using Zoom and Teams reluctantly at best. And now we spend large quantities of our days on those tools. And that has been a dramatic influence in our future workplace. Time will tell how this pandemic will affect workplace policies, culture, work styles, and behaviors. But the new apps that are making it easier than ever to convert virtually, like Teams and Skype and Zoom and Bluescape, all are going to help people over time do business virtually. The year of remote work, that is an understatement, I think, for just about everybody here. We're up 173% since 2005. And by 2025, 70% of the workforce will work remotely at least 5 days a month. I don't know if that sounds like a little or a lot to you, but if I say that another way, 70% of the workforce will work remotely at least 25% of the time. That, to me, that sounds very impactful as to what's going to happen over the next couple of years and how we're going to continue to draw those employees into the office and generate a culture that produces the results that the company would like. So the benefits of remote working are great. We've got improved staff retention, greater efficiency for firms and employees, lower commuting costs, lower stress levels. I would also say that in there, you would have to include some level of work-life balance discussion. I don't know that working at home improves your work-life balance, but it certainly needs to be discussed because you don't want to get overloaded. And now many companies have asked their employees to work from home, but are they ready for this for the future? So here's 5 tips for remote work as part of the trends. Develop a remote work policy checklist that includes HR and IT. That would include technology tools, training tools, even the nature of the employee agreement, I think, has to be addressed at some point for remote work. what measures of productivity are we going to have? What are going to be the expectations for office space or for time spent doing certain functions? I think those are all going to be very important for a remote work policy. The next, and obviously important to a lot of us, is to create a workspace that has a good chair and a height adjustable table that allows you to change postures. I'm not sure that a height adjustable table, again, is the end all be all, but I would say that having a good chair, not getting tied to it all day, and being able to change your work environment can be very helpful in your productivity and your outlook. A couple folks I talked to about this actually say that if you're working from home, don't always work at the same spot. Spend a little time maybe at the kitchen table when the kitchen is quiet. If you've got an office space, spend time there. If it ever gets warm again and you've got some outdoor space, you should use that, because that balance of being able to go from space to space is going to be very effective for boosting remote work. Agree on how and when to connect with your team and manager, defining proper communication channels. From a corporate and HR perspective, I see this one as critical, that we're going to have a lot of communication coming from the company back to that remote employee, not necessarily from HR, but from their team and their supervisor, their peers. There's going to have to be a virtual online working environment. Another suggestion is to put your blocks for focus work, creative work, collaboration, and social time all separate, so that when you're doing focus work, you've shut off a lot of those distractions. When you're doing creative work, that you're in a spot that is conducive to creative work. Obviously, collaboration with others and social time all require specific types of space as well. So you mix it up a little bit. And then creating virtual communities and workspace destinations using digital tools, which we kind of talked about earlier. When you communicate with your employees, how are you most effectively doing that? So distractions and focus. Obviously, this is the productivity killer. And the inability to complete focus work continues to be a top complaint for employees. The open concept has kind of contributed that a little bit, but at the same time, I think there's plenty of product solutions that can still give employees a place to do heads down work. But when their distractions occur, you can see some fairly significant declines in performance, between 3 and 23%. Actually, I shouldn't say that. There's a great white paper out there on that if you want to know about how distractions can be productivity killers. And if you'd like to just let Kevin or I know, I'd be happy to share that. You need to thoughtfully align your organizational culture and its workplace strategy to value necessary focus work, along with other ways of working. So you can't expect employees to be at their seat all the time. And I'm just taking a cultural icon from my past. I had a manager that felt, when I started, this has been 20 years ago or more, that if you weren't in your seat, you weren't working. Obviously, that culture is not working today. It's failed miserably. So those types of things have to keep up. And what they mean by along with other ways of working is we're going to have to be able to evolve our space to get employees back into the space and have them feel safe, whether it's in a one-on-one meeting, in a training session, a team meeting, or a company-wide meeting. There's going to be different formats for those, and we're going to have to find other ways of doing that. But then in the end, we've got to protect that focus work, because ultimately that's where a lot of our creative and processing energy goes. And we need the right type of spaces for individuals and groups for that type of thinking. And here's a couple of examples of how we've done some space. Hang on here a second. I made some notes on this one. Because as you go from pre-COVID to post-COVID, there are going to be some fairly significant updates to floor plates. And as you look at the top one, for instance, the pre-COVID, you see the training center. So in the pre-C19, right in the center, you'll notice that there's seating in there for about 20 people. And in post-COVID, that's basically turned into smaller individual spaces, again, to reduce the density. You'll see that also in some of the lounging areas against the walls to maintain 6-foot difference. It's a lot of repurposing of furniture, a lot of empty or unassigned workstations, depending on the density of the original floor plate. So these types of things, I think our industry is going through in an effort to make it immediately safe and comfortable for employees to come into. But I think this is just one step in the process. So we're going to need more space for distant social interacting at work, if that makes sense to you. But as you go through, there's several points. Obviously, you've got the lobby and entry points for facility flow, circulation, touch points. We would add options for mobility and flexibility we talked about in dense spaces, repurposing collaboration areas for individual work. You've got to communicate your circulation path. The drawing under the return to workplace verbiage talks about there may even need to be arrows on the floor like there were at the grocery store for a while, so that people don't cross paths unnecessarily. Converting unassigned space to assigned space for density, removing chairs so that people don't feel comfortable sitting where they shouldn't be, rearranging large meeting spaces to accommodate individual work and the much smaller. So, the whole floor plate is going to undergo a fairly vigorous transformation over the next year or so. So I think that's kind of one of the big takeaways right there, is you start to see the impacts on the footprint. And right now, in my mind, they're primarily being driven by COVID and not necessarily by what I would call other overwhelming economic trends. But hopefully the vaccine will reduce some of the pandemic fears that people are going to have in going back to work. So in conclusion, our overview, we talked a little bit about the STEEP strategy model. We talked about topics that are shaping and driving change and how they can influence the future of work. We examined those trends in a little bit of detail, and then we connected those trends to creation of environments, that will evolve, change, and impact the future of the workplace. There are numerous references for this CEU. And if anyone would like to have those, of course, we're willing to share those. It's a fairly large presentation, but if you make it known that you'd like to see any of the presentation or the facts behind it, feel free to reach out to Kevin or myself, and I'll make those available immediately to you. And with that, our CEU is good. Now, as promised, I'm going to leave that one up, so that you have the opportunity to, if that'll work with your phone, to read the QR code and get registered. So I'll leave that up for a few minutes. Thank you very much.
Steve, thank you very much for your presentation this afternoon and sharing the wealth of information that Hayworth has. I'm going to open it up for questions now. So if anybody would like to ask a few questions, I'm sure Steve can help answer those for us.
Hey, Steve, my name is Zach Van Cleve. I work at Renewable Energy Group in Ames, Iowa. Thanks for the presentation, a lot of good information, so I appreciate you sharing that with us. My question is around, so we, like a lot of companies, have fabricated these plexiglass, I call them glorified sneeze guards.
Yeah.
My sense is it's just for peace of mind. I don't know how much good they're going to do, and maybe they are, but do you see those staying up for 2-3 years, or do you get the sense if we get herd immunity or herd immunity that a lot of companies will start just pulling these off?
That is a great question, and in my role as a furniture manufacturer, I have seen some craziest stuff go up in the last year in an effort to make those people feel safe. I had a gentleman in Omaha who went to Home Depot and bought that thin 1/4-inch veneer sheeting material. And so his whole office, which was beautiful furniture, now has from the top of the panel to the ceiling, it looks like plywood. And so it's very dark, it's very segmented off. And in the end, the employees wouldn't come back to work there anyway because it was too early. So I think you're going to see, so to extrapolate that type of product application over time, I don't see that staying that way permanently. I think what you will see is you could see in some areas a return to higher panels. But Hayworth did some research, and I'm gonna qualify this, that Hayworth did this research, and so we're kind of outside of what was part of the CEU. But what I can tell you is that they did some research and some sneeze testing and found that even 80-inch high panels, which used to be the company that I work for was, that was one of their biggest selling panel sizes 10 years ago, 80-inch high panels, that won't stop the particulates from a particularly good sneeze. So the guards themselves are of not great effect. They're more emotional than they are physical. And I think as people realize that when they come to work, I think they're going to be more inclined to come to work if they can see out the window than to be in a plastic bubble. That's my spin on it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anything else?
Well, Steve, I know your presentation shared that the number of women that are in the workforce, but as you see some of the data out there now with the COVID, that's probably one of the biggest groups that have been impacted is the women in the workforce having to take more responsibility, helping at home with children and those types of things, and individual or single parenting families. Do you see that number coming back in the future?
Yes, I do. I see that coming back. I'd like to say sooner rather than later, but the reality is it's all going to be predicated on an effective vaccine. I just don't think you're going to get massive numbers of caregivers back in the office until they can be assured that they can go to the office and not be infected and bring it back to whoever they're caring for, whether it's their kids or their parents or, their family, friends, whatever their group is. I think it's going to be heavily predicated on that. And let's face it, we have reduced the amount of pressure from where we were almost a year ago today on employees coming back. When this thing first came down in February and March, everybody moved to go home, and that whole trend started to rise pretty substantially, and it's not going to entirely subside. This is my personal opinion. For what it's worth, I think we'll see somewhere between 10 and 20% reduction in a lot of the larger footprints around the country, because those tasks can be sent home and productivity can be measured. So it's a quantifiable job that can be done at home. And I think you're going to see a lot of those types of positions move to the home office.
One other thing you said in your presentation was sensors. Do you see other companies or other organizations using like a reservation systems so that you can check in that I want a certain desk on a certain floor and I know that that's available before I even go into the office?
I have not seen that. About all I've seen for screening is there's a couple of apps now that you can screen your health in the morning before you go to work. I know of a bank in Omaha that is actually, you got to log in and take your temperature, submit it on the app. The report then goes to your supervisor, and you are allowed to either come to work or not come to work that day. So I've seen that level of screening. I have not seen a reservation system yet. That a great idea if your culture is set up for that, because obviously if one person is using a workstation one day and you have somebody else using it the next day, what are the protocols for sharing that station? So I'd be anxious to see kind of what those look like. And Kevin, if you know of a company doing that, I'd love to find somebody to talk to there about that, because that is going to be the huge challenge, getting people back in the office and making them feel safe.
Do you see a shift in, I know a lot of companies like the Principal Financial Group where I work at, where we had an open office environment. Do you see that shifting back to more of an individual one-to-one assignment, or do you think open office environments are still here to stay?
I would say at a high level, open office is here to stay. I don't think people are going to give up their right to their window, the right to the openness of that layout. What I do think is going to change is meeting spaces, conference rooms, those types of things, cafes. Those are all going to have to change pretty substantially. But I think the open office and even the social spaces, the lounge areas, and those types of things, to be honest, I think those take on much more importance moving forward than they ever did in the past. I don't think you'll get people back to work anytime soon to do only focused, concentrative work in their office. I think they'll try to do that at home or out or someplace else. I don't think that the office will be a destination for that. The office will be a destination for teamwork and meetings and those kind of things.
Thank you. Any other questions that Steve can help address? Any work-related things?
Steve, this is Rod Stevens. And
Rod, how you doing? I saw your name on there.
Hey, I'm great. I've, as you well know, I'm dealing with old information here, but I remember when I was actively working, one of the biggest problems I had with management was to convince them when someone was working from home to help them equip their space at home properly, and try to explain to them that working at a folding chair and a card table was not safe and would eventually come around to bite management to bite them.
Agreed.
because of ergonomics. And how is Hayworth and other players in the marketplace helping to help companies understand that they can't just tell people to work from home and figure it out on their own? That there's really, if you're playing the long game, that can be a very dangerous and costly thing to do as a company.
Agreed, from many different aspects. I mean, think about not providing an employee with an ergonomic chair at a basic level.
Exactly. Yeah.
But even more so, how do you handle things like confidential information that comes across that computer while it's at home?
Mm-hmm.
You've got a variety of things there. So here's answer is a couple things. And I believe that I can speak for some of my main competitors. So let's talk about the big 4 or 5 furniture manufacturers out there at the moment. They all have what I would call pretty robust, what I would call work from home strategies, guidelines, topics that we are trying to get in front of corporate customers before their employees settle in at home or even come back to the offices. Is there a list of questions we need to talk about? A couple of great examples is, what does your home office look like? I've said for a long time, and I think you might agree, I think you can work from a card table, but you can't sit in a folding chair.
Yeah.
You need a decent chair to sit in. And then you can figure out what kind of platform you need for your work surface, but you got to have a good chair. And I see companies doing a fair amount of that. When this first started, I know, again, myself, our Hayworth and several of our main competitors all put a large focus on company stores. How can we help like a principal's employee get a chair for at home or something along those lines? So Hayworth, and I know Noel, Herman Miller, definitely. has a very robust home office platform offering. Herman Miller's numbers, I don't know if anybody saw the Monday Morning Quarterback, but the numbers were compared, and Herman Miller actually did the least bad of the manufacturers in the fall quarter because of their online presence. So there's a huge emphasis there. But I think it's going to really come to HR departments around the country to kind of bone up on what it's going to take to have a robust work from home policy. And some of that is furniture. Some of that is absolutely policy. Employment agreements are going to change a little bit, I think, because of it. All those need to reflect the current environment. So I hope that answers some of your question. If you'd like to see some more of that information, I'd be happy to share it as a sidebar.
Sure. Thanks, Steve.
All right, and that takes us up to about 3:55. Has anybody got any other questions? I don't want to take up too much of your time, but obviously this is a topic I love talking about. I thought the transition away from panels was going to be the big. I've been in the office furniture business for 25 years, and panels have obviously starting to go away. And I thought that was going to be the biggest change in the business during my career. And now, as of last year, I can honestly say that has become much less important as we figure our way through this pandemic. So it's amazing how a little shift in a pandemic, all of a sudden you're changing your career path.
Well, Steve, this is Kevin Nicollet. Thank you again for your time and sharing the wealth of information and research from Hayworth. We appreciate you joining us today and giving us a little insight on the trends of the workplace.
Yep. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
All right, everybody. Thank you very much. We're going to have another session, a Zoom meeting in March. I think it's going to deal with more of HVAC related issues. So if you're interested in learning a little bit about that next month, we'll send out our invitation, and please join us for another topic that we think is relevant in our world today. Have a good night.
Thank you.